Looks good.
Hey guys, welcome to another Leadfeeder webinar. We'll just wait a couple of moments for people to come in. I see the numbers popping up very quickly here, so we'll get going in a few minutes.
Holy cow, Andy, I think we're at 235,000 attendees already, man.
I think it's getting there, man. Just as well I upgraded the package with Zoom, you know, to get that like 250K, you know, like that's
hot.
It was important. It was important. I think I think we might be breaking a record today, one of our records in any case, with the amount of attendees that we're going to get on. I see it pumping up here. We're going up past 250 now.
But most importantly, Arnold Van Splunter is here. Arnold, thanks for joining us, man. Look at this.
We got Kevin from Amsterdam. What's up, Kevin?
Hey, Gary. Gary can't hear us, but Wendy, great to have you on.
Yeah, I want to know where everyone's
to
from.
chat in the window. Remember to change your little two bubble there in Zoom from all panelists to all panelists and attendees, so everyone can learn where you're from and can enjoy your comments. So drop that in. Let us know in the chat where you're coming in from, what your job is, and what you think of Andy's incredible background, live, real background. That's not virtual, folks.
This isn't fake. This is real. I can actually touch it, you know. So guys, we'll get going. Guys, everybody, thanks a bunch for coming on. As I said before, this is going to be a busy one. We've had 1,300 registrations almost, so that's a real testament to the guys that we have on today, and also the topic. So like we're coming to the end of Q3 now. You know, we're coming to the last week. We've got 4 days or 5 days left in the month, 5 days left in the queue. You know, don't want to put anybody under pressure, but you should be closing. But we're coming into Q4, which is obviously, you know, it needs to be a big one, with 2020 being, you know, the year that it was. Let's look at how we can get into Q4 on the strongest foot, right? So we wanted to put together, similar to some of the stuff that we've done before, a masterclass on how best to do cold outreach, right? So myself and Johnny, one of the guys on the Leadfeeder team, have been reaching out to a couple of different people that we've been working with over the past couple of months, and people we've been interacting with on LinkedIn. See, okay, who are the best people we could get on to give people a hand with selling over the phone, selling over email, and selling over video, right? So with that, let me introduce our guests. So I'll moderate today, but I won't be doing a huge amount of speaking. So I'll be quiet now in a moment or two, and I'll let the guys get on and give the value here. But today we have Christina Finset, who's the head of growth at Interseller. Christina is, I've been looking through our slide deck, and I'm super excited to see how she's going to change the outbound approach into inbound. That was one thing that stuck out from what you had in your slides there. I'm just speaking beforehand. Christina's like very, very focused on numbers and data, right? But at the same time, she's also very focused on the creative side, which is something that you don't typically see. Okay, so either you're one or the other, and having that like mix match makes it very, very interesting from an outbound perspective, being able to match both those worlds up. And I think she's going to be able to show you through her FIRE theory, or her FIRE framework, in terms of how you can best implement that into your outreach. So welcome today, Christina. Great to have you.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So then we have Tyler, and Tyler and myself have been doing a little bit of work together over the past couple of months. And Tyler is the VP of marketing over at Vidyard. I guess most people on here know Vidyard. It's a very well-known brand, thanks to the work that Tyler's done there. He's been there over 6 years. You're very welcome, Tyler. If you look at Tyler's background, also very interesting background, actually. Started off as solutions consultant, solutions engineer, you know, very, very technical focus, I would say. But if you watch any of the stuff that Tyler gets himself involved with, you can see that he's really a marketer. You know, he was faking it in that solution side of things, I think, early on in his career. But you can really see that his passion lies in marketing, and you can see that with the work that he's done with Vidyard. So Tyler's going to bring us through today how best to use video and email. So really excited to see that from you today, Tyler. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Great to be here.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And then last but not least, we have Russell Bands on. And Russell's a senior marketing director over at Gong. And I guess most people on the call here as well will know Gong. Gong probably at the moment don't need too much of an introduction. They're, you know, the hottest ticket in town when it comes to tech. But when when I was looking back at Russell's profile and his experience, you know, Russell's really focused on the demand generation world. So again, also very, very heavy focus on data, focus on numbers, but also matching that back to that creative side. He's also been behind managing SDR teams, so knows the sales world incredibly well. Plus, he also works for a company that focuses on revenue intelligence, and that revenue intelligence is focused on data within deals. And that goes all the way back from when people are first being prospected. Hey, what actual phrases work in that first conversation over phone and whatnot. And so Russell's going to be bringing us through that today in terms of what you can be looking out for when you're picking up the phone and when you're doing your cold outreach. Welcome today, Russell, mate.
Thanks, Andy. Every time I get an intro, either of myself or Gong, I aim to like play that clip of you. You're far too kind.
No probs, no probs. And just before we get started, guys, just some housekeeping. Like, please feel free to throw some questions into the chat window there. We said just before this that we'll try to interact as much as we can throughout. It's quite busy, so we have a lot of people on at the moment. But please do pop your questions into the chat box. We'll try to get back to them as soon as possible. At the same time, also there's a Q&A box there as well. Please post any questions in there as well. We will definitely get to those towards the end. Okay, so we will get started. So first up, we have Christina. And Christina, I'll let you take over from here on in, and I'll stop talking, yeah?
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, and listen, I'm super excited to talk about bringing some fire to the way that we approach outbound email. What's really interesting is I could probably talk about this for a few hours, but I'm going to try to jam pack and condense quite a bit of information in about 10, maybe to 12 minutes. So remember, this is just one of many frameworks. There's no silver bullet out there. Always be testing, always be iterating. Just to kind of elaborate a little bit about where I'm coming from. So at Interseller, I lead growth marketing, but I also handle all of demand gen, including the business development side of the business. So what's really cool is that I was in marketing and then took a break, did a 1-year kind of, I guess I'm going to call it an experiment now in full cycle sales, and came back to the marketing side. So this is something I live and breathe every day. I'm constantly doing outreach and helping our team to be more efficient. So cool. Let's kick it off. Let's kick it off with a question. And it's not a trick question, but it's a would you rather. And I didn't number these, but I'm going to ask people to put into chat either a 1 or a 2. Would you rather send an email to 300 plus people, right? Pretty good one-to-many messaging, maybe first name, company name, personalized, super easy. And get these kinds of numbers, a 60% open rate, a 6.7% reply rate, almost a 3% conversion to booked meetings. That's pretty darn good. That's one. Or would you rather, it's funny, people are already answering this. Would you rather send 40 messages and get a 90% open, a 50% plus reply, and then convert 20% of those to booked meetings? Seeing a lot of 2s. I actually saw someone put 1. I'll have to dig on that later. Let me also put this into perspective. That first campaign is over a 2-week period. The second campaign, that conversion was in the first 3 days. All right, cool. So personally, and I'm sure everyone listening and watching right now can probably confidently say, and even without knowing how I got there or how to get there, that they'd rather go with number 2, right? Cool. We can go to the next slide. All right, so this is where the outbound fire framework comes in. And this is a framework that is, purely around cold email outreach, but it's something that our team here practices at Interseller. It's something that I work proactively, and so does our customer success team with our customers to make sure that they're kind of following some of this process. And it's equal parts mindset shift and execution. And the way that we were really emailing even, 6 months ago, or let's just say prospecting and holistically, looks very different than what we're doing today. with COVID already going on. Beginning of COVID, my messaging was completely different. I'd like to think most everyone else here can agree that theirs was too. So yeah. But anyway, so let's get into this framework and what it really means. So F is for fixing your mindset. And really what this is about reframing what you believe a sales email should look like. We're all kind of taught or instilled the belief that we need to say things like who we are, why we're reaching out, what problem we're solving, more about our product and offering, all of that in an email because we feel like we need to build relevancy as quickly as possible. What I want you to think about is turning yourself off of your product, your service, yourself, and think about the fact that what you're trying to get out of that touch point is a ticket to a conversation. That's it. Once you get on a call, you're going to do what you do best, which is sell them, right? So I'm going to argue, and this is a practice that I run through, that if you have a compelling message and it has nothing to do with the product you're selling, maybe they posted something about Subarus. I know that's kind of a weird off the wall thing to talk about, but maybe they posted something about Subarus. You have a Subaru. You want to go ahead and hit on that and use that as a basis for connecting with them. If you have a compelling enough message, you don't have to say anything about your product. You are then putting the onus on your prospect to go and do their research. I know that's hard to believe. And then they are going to respond back to you with that context in mind. That's where the outbound lead becomes an inbound lead. They're doing the research. You're not putting all this pressure on them. They are finding out who you are, what you do. They're determining if it makes sense right now to explore that. And that's what they're responding with because you had a thoughtful message. So just think about that. I is for imagining yourself in your prospect's shoes. Obviously, if I reached out to Andy and said, Andy, hey, we're both in marketing. I'm selling a product that's great for marketers. It's going to solve all your problems. Can we chat? Andy's probably going to skip over that email. So again, just think about like what would get you to respond and start engaging with someone. R is for research. To me, arguably, this is the most important component of outreach. It's what kind of feeds the entire approach of personalization. I see people laughing, so wait, audio keeps cutting out. Okay, cool. So it's arguably the most important part of the process here, because if for some reason you aren't getting replies, it's the first thing I'm going to look at. Is your targeting on point? Do you have the right ICP? Do you have the right research to infuse into your messaging, whether it's LinkedIn content, company content, whatever you can do to kind of get that conversation going. And then E is for execution, which is the fun part, right? That's the testing, the iterating, the finding your A so that you can continue to A/B test over time. And then I just want to say, there's no shortage of methods, frameworks, templates out there. There's no silver bullet. It's really about finding what's going to work for you, setting a cadence, testing that against 50 to 100 prospects, and looking at the data, figuring out what you can iterate, what you should double down on, what you should abandon pretty quickly. We can go to the next slide. All right, cool. So let's quickly go through some do's and don'ts. So do, personalize. I personalize subject lines. And I'm talking about personalization, true personalization, beyond tokens like first name, company name. I'm talking about full-on 1 or 2 sentences that is very nuanced to that prospect, but you can still use a template as a building block. And I'll show you guys how to do that here in another slide. But you want to personalize. I found that using the first name in the subject line and staying under like 24 characters is ideal. So one of my go-tos is Andy, about your LinkedIn post, or Russell, I disagree with Tyler's post too. You can kind of use, look at Tyler. You can use different content to just kind of get people to open. And again, thinking about every component of your email as what is the intended action that you want to see, right? You want to see opens with a subject line. You want to get replies with your body. All right, make deposits. This is my favorite. The first email doesn't talk about the product, and neither do any of the other emails in our cadence. They are all simply gives. And here's the cool part. You don't have to have a lot of fancy content in-house. This can be as simple as taking a thought leader that you know is active in your space and in your prospect space and infusing that into your outreach note. Hey, Andy, do you follow Tyler? Yeah, Tyler put out this post about videos and how they're converting at, 10x for this one company. Man, this is so cool. I think this might be helpful to you. That's all you have to do. People like deposits. You're not asking for anything. It's a soft play. The other piece is pattern interrupts. I'm a big fan of this, and I also like just testing a lot of things. So I'm running a sequence right now that is completely different than this approach, but throwing in things like gifts, right? I have an email right now that I run if I don't get responses. And even on LinkedIn, if I don't get a response to a voice message, I'll actually pop in a GIF of a guy walking with his head between his legs, kind of like, head down. I'm really sad. I don't say anything. I literally just drop the GIF, and that gets people to respond. Stick to multiple channels. I know I'm talking about email here, but I am a big fan of not putting all your eggs in one basket. You've got to speak to your prospects at their different levels. There are some prospects that will answer more quickly on email than some of your prospects that would answer more quickly on LinkedIn, then some that want to watch a video, then some that want you to call them. Different forms of text work for everyone, and different forms of communication work for everyone. So I'm a big fan of trying to test those channels and figure out what's moving the needle more for you. And if you can, spread out touch points along different channels. And then using building block templates. If you go online right now and Googled high performing sales templates or high performing sales emails, chances are you're going to come up with email templates. They're like, this is the template that's going to move the needle for you. The problem is that hundreds of other people, and maybe thousands, depending on how much traffic's coming to that template, are using probably this pretty similar variation of it. And that's going to already hurt your deliverability. So it's super important to make sure that you are staying fresh on your content. You're not using standalone templates. And if you use something like a building block template, which I'll show you, you're constantly keeping your content fresh, but you're keeping certain components the same. Makes it easy to repeat. Okay? Don'ts are easy. Don't make it about you. It's about your prospect, right? Feed their ego, feed them up. Make sure that you're talking about them and not about you. Don't spray and pray. Take a quality approach. Don't pitch anything. Don't add attachments, because that's hurting your deliverability too. No, I don't want to see your media kit on a first touch. We haven't even talked. I want to talk to you first. Maybe this isn't a good fit. I don't need your media kit. And then again, just don't use unchanged templates, right? Because you're going to hurt yourself. We can move to the next one, Andy. All right, cool. So here is an example of kind of the building block that I use and our team uses on a first touch for our accounts. And I'll kind of read through this just real quickly. So again, you're going to see that subject line, Daniel, about your LinkedIn post. Hi, Daniel. I noticed that you recently shared an ERE article on LinkedIn about veteran recruiting and the transition of skills gap that exists, and thought I'd reach out. The only thing I'm changing out in that sentence is what the post is about. Okay. This article was super insightful, but this, and then I'm simply taking an excerpt that I thought was powerful or impactful from that article and saying it was right on the money and I couldn't agree more. And then this is where I transition. With that said, I'd love to get you on a call. And yes, as cliche as it is, I do prompt for the call and it works. So I think, again, this is going to be different for everyone, but I'd love to get on a call with you, 10 to 15 minutes, learn about you, your company, your focus areas. Would love to earn the right to talk through how Interseller might fit in. Only place I mentioned the company other than my signature block. And again, if it's interesting, they're going to click. The data in a lot of my campaigns, the clicks to the website versus the replies are almost directly correlated. So it's very clear that that will happen if you've got the right message. And then here's that data correlation. Actually, I threw it in the next slide. I forgot. I threw that in there last minute before this presentation. If you want to go to the next one, there we go. So here's that correlation. This is an active campaign I'm currently running. And you'll see here, 26% clicked and 26.8% replied. So it's almost apples to apples there on the inbound, like the outbound taking that inbound route. So again, this is the interesting piece that I've kind of found correlate over time, is that you're putting the onus on your prospect to do their research, knowing that you have your target nailed. This is what will happen. Okay. And then last slide here, I think. All right, cool. So this is my go-to cadence, and I personally hate the industry average baselines. I just do. I think we can all do better than that. And so I'm always willing to talk about this offline. So feel free to hit me up. But my go-to cadence is literally a mixture between email and LinkedIn, with email being the focal point. So I have that personalized first email. Everything else I do is fairly, I don't want to say basic, but I'm not doing a whole lot of extra effort there. And if you're using any kind of automation tool, your follow-ups are going to continue to go out while you're doing things like connecting on LinkedIn, dropping a voice message or a video message, doing some sort of gift follow-up, things like that. And I also, for sharing this slide deck, Andy, are we sharing this with everyone afterwards? Cool. That's actually clickable. You can actually go to this personalized outreach process doc that kind of outlines this process for you if you wanted to start testing it and applying. And that's it. That's all I have to say. There's a lot more.
That was really good. Thank you so much. There was one thing that really resonated with me, by the way. And actually, I typed it into the chat box here, and Tyler said to me, he said, "You're only talking to the panelists, Andy, you know, like you're not talking to the audience." So I was like, oh no. Okay, so wait, and then with the moment had passed, but I still want to bring it up now. You said like one thing in your email about love to earn the right to show Interseller to you, right? Like that to me is perfect, because so many people just vomit out their pitch, right? And say, okay, now I'm in with you, so you need to listen to me, right? But like, it's that small little phrase. I'd love to just earn the right with you to get to that place where you might actually jump on the call with me. It's something small, but it's like, it could make a difference between getting a connect or not.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I think there's this eagerness to want to throw out and cast a wide net, because, you know, my CEO, Stephen Liu, talks about this all the time. Email is not actually free. You know, yeah, could you go and send 500 emails right now? Sure, you could try to do that, but the chances are you're going to impact your deliverability, and then you're going to earn yourself, you know, 4 to 8 weeks of trying to recover that. And so I think what's really important here is that, yes, it takes more time to personalize, but it is worth it in the you know, at the end. So if you can build that data and business case on why you should be doing that and getting buy-in internally, test it, do it, see what happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Christina. That was really amazing. Just a couple of questions came in. I'll just hit up one of the questions was around not using, the question was, how do you not use phone as well? Yes, Christina did mention throughout that she would use multiple touch points, however, or multiple outreach methods. However, Christina's only focused on the email part for today. So that's, Russell will be covering that a little bit later on. But Christina, I think I'm talking on your behalf where I'll say that you also use the phone as well, right?
No, I'm going to be really transparent here. I do not cold call. I don't, it's going to sound kind of bad, but I feel like if I'm getting this kind of return on email, I don't have the need to do cold calling. So it's not my area of expertise, and I'll never pretend that it is. I'm not opposed to it. I'd probably have to learn some tips from, you know, Russell and everybody
Russell's
else.
The man.
But yeah,
Russell's the man.
But yeah, I don't cold call. I don't.
That's good. I mean, you have the framework there with the FIRE framework anyway to get that 70% open rate anyway. So I mean, that's super interesting. Thank you so much. Yeah. So next up we have Tyler from Vidyard. Tyler, over to you, mate.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So where Christina brought the fire to your prospecting, I'm going to bring the face the personality, the wild ideas through the use of the most visual, the most engaging medium you can use, which is video. Now, before I hop into this, I would love for as many of you as possible, Galem, Callum, everybody else out there, to drop a note into the chat to all panelists and attendees. Just let me know, yes or no, if you've tried using video messages, video recordings in your outbound prospecting to date. So we're seeing, okay, a pretty good mix here. Lots of yeses, lots of nos, probably seems pretty 50-50 from what I'm seeing, which is about what I would expect, maybe a few more nos. So I'm gonna walk through for all of you this idea of using video in your outbound prospecting through a number of examples to help you visualize and understand what it is we're talking about here, and to start to peel back what some of the opportunities and best practices are for you to boost your response rates, to ultimately increase the conversion rate on meetings booked using this visual medium. So Andy, if you want to go to the next slide, I had the luxury of putting in my slides after Christina's. And when I looked at her content, I actually loved her list of do's here for your outbound messaging. And I thought, of course, this is messaging that applies to any kind of outbound selling that you're doing. You should absolutely personalize, make those deposits, pattern interrupt, use multiple channels. And if you take a look at the email on the right-hand side, this is my best example of pattern interrupting. So what I did here, I took Christina as a potential prospect of mine, and I thought through how might I use a video in one of my email messages, even a LinkedIn message to Christina if I were prospecting her, to really hyper-personalize that message, to make a deposit and use the value of video to more clearly explain a give, to pattern interrupt by dropping a video into her inbox, but not just a video, one that has my face on it and actually also has her face on it. So what I did here is I decided for Christina, when I was going to prospect her, I went to her LinkedIn profile and I used a wonderful tool called Vidyard to record and send my videos. And I hit the record button and I chose to do a screen sharing video with my camera on as well. And so I started to record my screen with Christina's own LinkedIn profile up on the screen. And I recorded a quick message basically saying, hey, Christina, I was checking out your LinkedIn profile and I understand that you are a growth marketing leader. And I've worked with a number of other growth marketing leaders. And I know one of the biggest challenges is A, B, and C. One of the things I think I could probably help you with is blah, blah, blah. And I've got a couple more ideas that I'd love to share with you. Could I send you another video to explain those in a little bit more detail? Let me know what you think, right? So that's basically my script for that video. Now you can also see the introductory text here that I put into the message to make sure it was very personal and caught her attention. So the subject line says Christina plus Vidyard video for you. Video for you is very eye-catching, where people don't expect that in the B2B sales world. They made me a video, super interesting. Okay, now let's read the copy. Hi Christina, Tyler from Vidyard here. Just gotta say your LinkedIn profile is absolute fire. Yep, I went there, right? So very personalized. She's got, you know, her fire framework on her site. So yeah, I went there, keeping it casual and interesting. Okay, as a growth marketing leader, I can only imagine how busy you are. So I made you this video to introduce myself and explain one of the 3 big ways I think I can help. So the reason that I did this and this sort of copy for the intro was to make it personal, make sure she knew this was for her. Obviously the thumbnail image of the video also demonstrates I made this for her. But I'm also addressing right up front the potential concerns she might have with clicking and watching a video. Like it's going to be too long. So you can actually see below, I said, check out this video, 43 seconds that could change Christina's life, right? That's the hyperlink I have under the video for her to click to watch it. Made it clear there, it's a short video. And I made it clear, I made you the video because I wanted to introduce myself and explain something more clearly. So that's why I've included this. So all of this goes together into your brain firing on all cylinders. Christina, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you like, would you click and watch this video? But you can give me a little head nod or a little, if you think, yeah, you know what, I might watch this. Okay, Christina's going to watch this video. Awesome. So this is a very actually simple way to hyper personalize, to hyper pattern interrupt in your emails as well as in your LinkedIn outreach by recording and sharing a personalized video. And when I say a very easy, a lot of you are going to be like, how can that be easy? Like, how can I, like, that blows my mind, making a video, sending a via email. But the tools are there that literally it's click, record, adds in the thumbnail image, send it, and you're done. And it's something that we're seeing more and more sellers do. So let's move on to a second example here, not from me, but from another customer that I know that I've worked with. This is Morgan Gillespie here, who is used to be an SDR at a company called Terminus, who does account-based marketing platform. And she eventually became an SDR leader. She's now like, I don't know, CEO of GE or something. She's been so successful with using video. And this is just an example of what she started doing in her early days that she saw phenomenal success with. So she would record a webcam video and she would have a little whiteboard where she could write the person's name on it or some kind of custom message. And she would hold that up in her video so that this would become the thumbnail image that she would send in her email. And again, the reason she was doing this was when somebody named Rebecca got this video, they could immediately tell this was just for them. Now, in this case, she's holding up a beer, not because she's a heavy drinker at work, but because the prospect she was going after was in an industry that had something related to alcohol distribution or beer or whatever it was, right? So if she was actually prospecting somebody who worked for a shoe manufacturer, she would have been holding up one of their shoes. And she brought in sort of visual elements to make it very relatable, very clear, and to bring that sense of personality and almost a little bit of fun into the process, which again, is very much a pattern interrupt from your typical sales emails that feel like it's all about them, that all they're trying to do is book time with you. This is the stuff that actually kind of makes you smile and go, huh, this is actually a real person. They put in the investment and the time to record me a custom video. My expectation of value is higher. And you know what, after watching this, it's the kind of person I could see myself doing business with. Yeah, let's learn more, right? So these are all the little things that we're trying to accomplish by sending videos as part of your prospecting. Andy, let's move on to one more example, which almost literally brings together fire and video, which is this wonderful example from Frankie Weschler at Dynamic Signal. Now, yes, I added in that little fire graphic onto his thumbnail image. That wasn't there originally. But the reason I did was Frankie was prospecting into an account called Buffalo Wild Wings. Now, for those of you not familiar, Buffalo Wild Wing is a restaurant chain in North America that sells, you guessed it, chicken wings. Now, Frankie had been prospecting into them. He'd been emailing, he'd been phoning, he'd been doing all the best practices. And then he decided to make them a video. And what he did was he went down to one of the local Buffalo Wild Wing restaurants and he got a takeout order of their hottest, spiciest wings. They're called their blazing wings. They're like totally off the charts on the heat scale for spicy hot sauce. And he brought this back and he held them up. He knew he only had one take to make this work. And he held them up in front of the camera like you see there, and he hit the record button and he said, "Hey, friends at Buffalo Wild Wing, I've been trying to get in touch with you for a little while because I really genuinely believe we can really help. And to show how committed I am to working with you guys, I'm going to eat one of your blazing wings while I deliver my pitch to you. So here we go." And he opens up the box and he takes a bite of one of these blazing wings. And it is the best thing you've seen since, the latest cat video. He starts welling up, like tears immediately start coming down. He's coughing, but he starts into his pitch and he says, "Here at Dynamic Signal, we help companies just like yours." And he turns, takes a sip of water, and he's like, he coughs a bit, but he gets through it. And it's like the funniest 2.5 minutes of watching somebody try to do a sales pitch. When he ends, at the end, the other people in his office, this was back before COVID, stood up and all applauded him before he had stopped on his video, right? So super fun. And he sent this video over to, I think it was about a dozen different people at the company that he was trying to prospect into. He sent it over. And again, when he tells this story, it absolutely warmed my heart. He said, not only did he finally get a response from them, and he got a response within a couple hours of sending it over, but they went quote unquote viral within their company. He ended up with over 150 views of that video that he sent over to this account because people started forwarding it around and going, "Check this out. This is the greatest thing," right? And so it was this again, this amazing moment where I thought Frankie did such a great job of hyper personalizing, pattern interrupting, using a new channel, and then ultimately though, putting his personality out there and, trying something new. Now you can't always do something like this. Maybe you're not the kind of person who's comfortable doing something a little bit funny like that. Maybe you're not into companies that have an obvious sort of physical element you could bring into your video. But there's always something you can think about. Put yourself in your prospect's shoes and think, what might grab their attention, and show them how much I've actually researched them or learned about them. Things like bringing up that article, you know, Christina, in the email template you showed, what I might have done is recorded a video as well with that article actually up on the screen to prove I had actually read that article. And I might have it up on the screen while I talk, and then have a quick video where I actually talk about it with that sentence highlighted. Again, another example of showing the commitment. And then using it as a stepping point to introduce yourself. Because the added benefit of all this is by the time they've watched your video, even if they don't respond, you are now a human to them. You're no longer an email address. You're no longer a seller. You're a real person. And that goes a long way and makes you much more memorable. Okay, those are 3 examples just to show you some teasers of how you can use video in somewhat creative ways. You don't always have to do that. Sometimes it can just be you on camera delivering your message, and even that can help get your face in front of people. The way people are doing this, again, there's Vidyard has free tools. I'll share the link with you guys. There's others out there as well. But literally these tools plug right into Chrome. They plug right into Gmail and Outlook. It's 1 click to record a webcam video or a screen share video, and then 1 click to drop the thumbnail image, which links out to that video into your outbound message. You can even make an animated GIF thumbnail, so you're like waving in the camera, or, you know, popping the beer up and down, or whatever it happens to be. Works so very well. And I see responses like this all the time. This was like last week, I got a note from somebody who said, I'm shocked more people aren't doing this. I have lots of great anecdotes about our success with video, but in terms of data, 2.5x increase in meetings booked, 2.5x increase in opportunities, and 5x the response rate. And his team started doing this 3 months ago. It's wild. I hear this time and time again. There's really no barrier to getting going with this stuff. So I'm going to leave you now in the next slide, Andy, with my final tips for how to crush it with video. People always ask, what are your tips? What are the best practices? Now, I didn't have an acronym for this, but then I saw Christina's FIRE, and I was like, oh man, I got to step up my game. So I came up with an acronym on the fly. This is exclusive for all of you. First access to Tyler's new acronym, which is CRUSH, how to crush it with video. First, be casual, be personal, be authentic, right? Don't overscript it. Don't be too formal. This is your chance to be yourself and to be human and to be authentic. And that goes such a long way today. The R is for being relevant and relatable, like any messaging you do, but think about how you could do that through video by bringing in things that are relevant and relatable to them, like their LinkedIn profile, you know, one of their shoes that they manufacture, whatever it happens to be. U is, I had to come up with something here and work my words around, but it's to use visuals to your advantage, right? As you see, a whiteboard, a screen share, a prop. Video is your one chance to be visual in that prospecting cycle. Use it to your advantage and be creative. S is short. The good old KISS acronym? Well, here it applies. Keep it short, seller. Under 60 seconds for any prospecting videos, or your engagement rate is going to die. As soon as somebody sees a 3-digit timestamp on your video, they're not going to watch. Keep it under 60 seconds. And finally, H is be helpful. Help them understand what you're trying to do for them. Use the power of your voice, the power of visuals to be clear and helpful. And that is such a powerful way to prospect and sell. Try it out for free. Go nuts. Let me know what you think. With that, I will end this section on crushing it with video.
Tyler, you crushed it. I'm sorry, I had to do it. And Christina came out with the same thing. So Tyler, that was super interesting, mate. Thank you so much. There's been a couple of questions come in the Q&A, and quite a bit, quite a few of the questions are around deliverability with having video and email. So like, just before we move on to Russell, maybe you could touch on a couple of points there, because there's been some concerns. Hey, if I put video into email, is it going to cause problems with my deliverability?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So what's important here is that in today's world, you're not like recording a video like with your phone or like QuickTime or something and then attaching an MP4 file, right? Like that you're not doing. What you're doing is you're using a web-based tool like Vidyard to record your video, and then it's immediately hosted on its own dedicated landing page. And then what you're sending to them is a link, a hyperlink to watch that video, as well as hopefully the thumbnail image that represents that video. So at the end of the day, it's the same deliverability typically that you're going to see with sending a message that has a hyperlink and or an image in it. So it plays by the same rules. It's not a YouTube link, so you're not going to get caught into like people that have YouTube filtered out and things like that. So I say that's the way to think about it. Can it impact deliverability? Sure, like sometimes including images and things like that can, but it's the same as doing that, which again is why it is so important to make this a part of your overall mix. I do not advocate having a video in every one of your emails you send to your prospects. So be smart about where it fits into your cadence. And we hear most frequently that people are successful using a video in the second, third, or fourth touch of their cadence. So start with your initial email, start with your phone call or social message, and then once you've tried a couple, then send that video. And that's where we found it to be the most successful for people in their cadence. And then perhaps once later on, using a different style like a screen share before the breakup email. So hopefully that helps.
Absolutely, Tyler. Thanks, mate. And actually, Christina put a good point there into the chat box as well, just around if images, GIFs, videos, etc. are relevant to the message you're sending, the deliverability should be less impacted. So that's also a thing to take away. So you're not actually sending a video in attachment. It's actually sending a link to a video with a GIF embedded within the email or an image, for example. But okay, so look, we have some more questions, but we'll get to those in a couple of minutes. So we'll go last but not least over to Russell.
Cool. First of all, I feel bad that I got to go after this guy. Going after Tyler is like, we should have rearranged the order here. I do want to make sure we have time for questions, so I'm going to go pretty quickly. But we're going to talk about cold calling in a second here. And I use the same moniker that the other folks did with a cool emoji. We're going to bring the cool into the cold calling. All right, cool into cold calling. I don't know if it's the coolest emoji I could find. I don't really use emojis. But that's what we're here to do. So Andy kind of mentioned earlier, if you're not familiar with the Gong, we're a revenue intelligence platform that captures customer-facing conversations. So like email, web conferencing, most importantly, calls. So I was able to, be like, hey, data research team, give us some insight into what's happening on these cold calls, what's working, what's not working, and what you got is what's on the screen in front of you. The 8 pro tips to rock in your cold calls, okay? So we're going to go through the first 3 and then we'll go through the rest of them. The first, number 1, use your full name in your intro. Hi, this is Russell Banzon giving you a call from Gong.io. And why do you do this? It's because important folks state their full name. It just happens all the time. Hello, this is Barack Obama. People just do it. And then all of a sudden you're like, dang, this person is super authoritative. Even if it's like very, very slightly, it changes the psychology there. The second one, I'm probably not going to make a lot of friends here. Okay. But don't use, did I catch you at a bad time? So many folks out there say like, hey, use this as a part of your introduction. And did I catch you at a bad time? The theory behind it is like, we want people to feel like they have the power in the cold call, right? They want folks to be able to say, no, you didn't catch me at a bad time. But is there really, like when you call folks nowadays, do folks really say like, no, it's a perfect time for you to give me a cold call? There's not oftentimes the perfect time for a cold call. So a lot of times this backfires for a lot of folks, right? It's never a good time. And what we see in the data is that when you use this intro, it decreases your success rate against the baseline by 40%. So what do you use instead? I suggest you use, how have you been? How have you been? Similar to what Tyler and Christina have been talking about is a pattern interrupt, right? Hey, this is Russell Banzon giving you a call from Gong.io. How have you been? And immediately they start to think like, wait a second, who is this? Where are you calling from? Are you my friend? Are you my mom? How have you been? Are we friends? Have you known me for quite a while? Have we talked before? Right? It's a pattern disrupt. And what we see in the data for this one is that it increases your success rate by 6.6x. It's pretty dang good. But how have you been is one of my favorite intros. So those are your first 3 pro tips. All right, next 3. Open with a reason for your call. This is like so dang, obvious, but a lot of folks forget it. When I was an SDR, my first cold call, I basically picked up the phone. I said, hello, this is Russell Banzon. How are you doing? And then I literally heard the prospect say hello. I dropped an F-bomb and then I hung up on him. because I got so dang nervous and I forgot what the reason for my call was. It's so obvious, but open with like, hey, I thought it was relevant to reach out because of X, Y, and Z. And this leans into the next one, which is do your research. You got to have some research coming in. Like, why was it relevant for you to call, right? If I'm talking to somebody who just recently went through an acquisition, I should probably lean into that, right? I thought it was relevant to reach out because I saw the acquisition of X company. And at Gong, blah, 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 right? So make sure that there is a reason for your call, it's relevant, so on and so forth, and do your research. The do your research part as well, there's no more excuses, yo. There's Zoom info, there's LinkedIn, there's gosh dang Facebook. You know, you have so much research. There's Google, right? Or you can go into Gong and listen to a recent call that we had with this account, right? There's so much available research out there, either on the person or the account. Both work, right? You can use research on either one and be really, really successful. So I encourage you, again, to do your research ahead of time. And of course, you can use account research for multiple personas in that account. Or if you're targeting your most valued personas, definitely look into that particular person. Okay. Now, the last one, avoid discovery. I'm probably not making any friends here, especially if there's any sales leaders on the call, but I encourage you to avoid discovery. And that's because the purpose of your cold call, again, this wasn't an inbound lead, so it's a little bit different. The goal of your call, similar to the outbound email that Christina was talking about earlier, is to sell the meeting. Your goal is to sell the meeting. So don't go with the, hey, what's your most important challenge right now? Or what's your top priority in your organization? You caught these folks out of the blue, you know, like don't ask them the existential questions right in that moment. It's not the time. You got to go and get the meeting, go and get the close. Okay. And then when you get to that first initial discovery call, it's called a discovery call because it's for discovery. All right. So those are your next three. Last two. Okay. Make your pitch with a targeted value proposition. Another dang obvious one. But folks, you are going to have to make a pitch at some point. Make sure your pitch is ready and it's concise. Similar to videos, you're going to want to keep this really, really short. You want to keep it 30 seconds-ish or less. If you want to pattern disrupt, you can say, hey, can I have 32 seconds to let you know what we do? And you can tell me if it's even worth the further conversation, right? And then go into your pitch, but make sure that pitch is ready. Now, when you have your pitch, make sure it's with a targeted value proposition. You did the research on the account, hopefully. You did the research on the person. Pick the value proposition for your organization that makes the most sense for this prospect, right? I think a lot of folks get really, really concerned with like, I got to talk, about soup to nuts, like marketing automation, for example. I got to talk about email. I got to talk about data management. I got to talk about integrations, so on and so forth. Don't worry about that. Pick the one thing that you think is going to resonate the most and use that value proposition. That's the most important one. And when you close out that value proposition, you can be like, hey, you can see it for yourself. And then go for the close. Have your closing question ready. A lot of folks get to the finish line. I listen to cold calls all the time. As a former SDR leader myself, I listen to calls all the time. And some people get to the finish line, rock it through 80, 90% of the call, and get to the last 10% of the call and don't close. You got to close. That last 10% is, I think the intro is probably the most important, but right after that is, yeah, exactly. Some people are like, shoot, do you drink water? Do you have email? No, use a simple one. And our favorite one that we see works really, really well in the data is, do you have your calendar handy? You get through your fire introduction, you crush the pitch. See what I did there? Fire, crush. You may have heard that throughout the presentation. And then you get to the close, okay? I did that on the fly. I'm glad that I got claps there. All right, when you get to the close, it's probably the most important section there. So make sure you go with, hey, you're bought in. I gave you the targeted value proposition. You said yes, it resonates. Let's go for the close. Let's set up some time. Do you have your calendar handy? That's my favorite closer. All right, wrapping it up. Your 8 pro tips. We got to reinforce the information. Number 1, use your full name in your intro. Hey, this is Russell Banzon giving you a call from Gong.io. Did I catch you at a bad time? Nope. Wrong question. Use, hey, this is Russell Banzon giving you a call from Gong.io. How have you been? 4, open with a reason for your call. Make sure that there is a particular reason, that it's relevant. Why did you feel like it was relevant to reach out to this person or this account? 5, do your research. 6, avoid discovery and the existential questions of what is the meaning of life. Don't ask them that on your initial phone call. 7, make your pitch with your targeted value proposition. And 8, have your closing question ready and you're good to go.
Russell, that was amazing, mate. Like that was really good because it's such a simple thing that people forget about. And there's a couple of things that really resonated with me. You know, the research part is really important, which I think 95% of SDRs on the planet have forgotten that that's actually playing a role in actually getting connects, right? Like that people don't even do the slightest bit of research, like the tiniest bit. I had one thing I posted out on LinkedIn yesterday. What happened was I got a LinkedIn connection request, okay? And I accepted it a couple of minutes after I got it. And then within 13 seconds, I got this like blew up pitch in via LinkedIn Messenger, right? Not in any way connected to me at all. No way personalized. Like didn't even pretend that it was personalized, right? Because like this 150 word thing popped up in my inbox 13 seconds after I accepted to connect, you know? There's been no research done in the background at all. And it's like, it's such like, if he had to spend, like I did a thing where I said, okay, I'm going to spend 13 seconds figuring out some things that would maybe personalize this a little bit better. And like, I said, okay, well, like I could put in a meme, I could put in a joke, or I could ask, how are you doing? You know? And that took me 13 seconds to think about, right? Now, if somebody else, an SDR, spent like 13 seconds just thinking about how to personalize, or like, and then spent 5 minutes actually personalizing, then they'd probably get a connect with me, right? But another thing that was really great about that is the discovery piece. It does my head in when people call me and start asking me, hey, what are your OKRs for Q4? And I'm like, first of all, I don't know who you are. Second of all, do you have an hour? So that we can go down and sit down through all my objectives and key results for Q4. You know, there's nothing worse than that because I don't make connection to you. So like, you're interrupting my day, you know, so let's at least, you know, have something that's going to be a bit lighthearted for me. I don't want to be grilled by you to tell me that I'm not doing my job well and you can help me to do it better, right?
Totally. on those two things, Andy, the first one, actually, let's talk about the second one really quick. The second one, the discovery one, is super funny. A lot of folks fall into the trap of asking the wrong questions, but that's not to say that you can't slide in like your casual qualification question too. Like as you're booking that meeting or after you go like, hey, do you have your calendar handy? And they're pulling up their calendar. Hey, while you're doing that, I'm just curious, what CRM do you use? Or I'm just curious, like how many folks do you have on your sales team, right? You can ask like super easy questions like that, but avoid the crazy ones.
Absolutely. I feel like people get like a little bit excited by the fact that they've gotten a connect, and then they're like, okay, let's throw the kitchen sink on him real quick. Come on, he's definitely going to answer. He's answered his phone, you know. So, but yeah, that was really, really interesting. Thank you so much. Like we have another almost 10 minutes. So I know there's been a number of questions. So like I'd like to get to as many of them as possible. So I've just gone into the Q&A part, and there's a couple of questions here. And if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to throw them into the Q&A section, or else put them into the chat. But one of the things that came for you, Christine, and I'm sure the other guys will be able to answer this as well, is around personalization at scale. So, yeah. You know, you mentioned being able to reach out or getting the data on outreach to 150 accounts whilst at the same time personalizing. How do you go about doing that? What way do you use it?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really good question. And listen, the stuff that I shared can be done with any kind of tech-enabled process and or manually if you really wanted to. Tech obviously helps, right? I'm using a tool, which happens to be our tool, but there's a lot out there to do the data finding and the personalization while I'm on their LinkedIn profile. and then dropping them into an email. Once it kicks off, all of my additional touch points are mostly automated in the sense of, you know, I don't really have to give as much mind to that. What I will say is the biggest pushback I get from sales leaders specifically is it's going to take way too much time for my reps to personalize like that. And what I will argue again is let one of your reps who's really eager to do this test it, right? And see what kind of data you get. If it doesn't work, cool, scrap it, do you. But I think at the end of the day, it really does provide the results that you really all want to see in cold email outreach. And the other piece is that practice makes perfect. And what I mean by that is I can now go on and quickly surface research on people and know when to stop going down the rabbit hole and go to someone else. It comes with time. So you've got to be able to give people the tools and the resources to enable them to do something like this, because it's going to produce the results.
That makes sense. Thanks, Christina. One of the things that came in there, Russell, that you might be able to answer, mate, was just around, there was, bear with me just a sec, the average duration of the best cold call. So is it an effective one? Should we keep it short to be effective? Like what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I would say one is I transparently haven't looked at the data, so I'm super curious about that now. I'm going to go do that after this. But as an SDR leader, what I've noticed the most successful reps do is they go off of the prospect, right? As I was preparing for the presentation today, I was just listening to a bunch of successful cold calls in Gong by our own team. And the successful ones, they span varying times. Some were 10 minutes, some were 3 minutes, right? You get to the pitch, you get through your intro in 10 seconds, you get through the pitch in about 30 to 45 seconds, you go for the close, that's another 15, 20 seconds. And the prospect maybe has a little bit of back and forth, and you can get a successful cold call done in 2 or 3 minutes with very busy folks. But there was one I was listening to last night that was 12 minutes because this guy just really wanted to chat, which was also surprising because he was a CEO. But the SDR was super charismatic, and they started talking about stocks for 5 minutes, and that got my open up a little bit.
That's super interesting. I mean, the stuff that comes up on cold calls can sometimes depend on what time of the day you reach people at, what's going on around them, especially at this time, with COVID, people working from home, you have kids screaming in the background, dogs barking, lots of things going on. But it's, I think as well, like, Russell, have you guys found, like, from the data that you're actually getting more connect via the phone at the moment?
Yeah.
Like, I've seen that data elsewhere that especially now, because people were afraid for a while to pick up the phone. I think now is the time that cold call is making a big resurgence. Is that the truth?
Yeah. So for us, our mix has stayed roughly the same. I guess like pre and post COVID, to be super transparent. It's probably like 40 or 45% cold calling for opportunities. It's about 30-ish% for LinkedIn, and the remaining percentage for email. And cold calling has still been strong throughout this entire environment. Now, it requires you to go and get that data for mobile phones, right? Whether that be via ZoomInfo, Clearbit, or whatever solution you want to use, so on and so forth. But you can find it.
That makes
Andy,
sense.
I've got just sort of an add-on comment to that, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, shoot.
So I think one of the really interesting things right now, for those of you that have sales reps or yourselves that are now working at home instead of working in a collaborative office, there's a lot of negatives to that, of people aren't, around their peers, they're not overhearing each other. But there's also the positive that people are in their own space. They're in their own secure, kind of comfortable space where they're not talking over each other. And so I know in our own sales team, they have dramatically moved to phone and video as their primary modes of connecting with people now. They're still doing email, of course, but they don't feel like they have to hide behind their keyboard, because before, when they wanted to make a phone call, they like book a call room, and they wouldn't want to record a video because they're like, oh, it's going to take me 3 takes. I'm going to look like an idiot. But now that everybody's at home, embrace it, right? And encourage yourself or people on your team to say, in your home environment, optimize it for being on the phone, for recording videos, for being on video calls, and own it and like embrace it. And I think it's a real opportunity for all of us to stop hiding behind the keyboard and say, yep, I got this. And it's time to find my voice and put my face out there.
I fully agree. And the technology that we have in our pockets nowadays makes that so much more accessible as well, Tyler. You know, you've got your phone, your camera, everything in your pocket. You can send voice messages, you can send SMS messages, you send WhatsApp messages, you can send somebody a Facebook message. I don't think that's a good idea, but you can do it. But like there's so many means of being able to reach out to a prospect just out of your own pocket nowadays, and you can do it anywhere, working at home, whatever. But it makes it super interesting. There's been like just looking through the rest of the questions here. There's one interesting one actually around cold calling, like about getting through receptionists. So receptionists tend to be like the gatekeepers. You know, if you don't get a direct dial, you're gonna have some trouble getting through a receptionist, unless the receptionist is super sloppy or is like, I'll just put them through anyway. You know. So Russell, what's your take on that, mate?
I get fired up by this question. I love this one because it speaks to like how you think about the different levels in the org, right? I think a lot of folks, whether it's receptionists or assistants, or it's even individual ICs, they don't like calling into these folks. But ICs, maybe low-level managers who sit below your DM, your decision maker, they're like, they're like gold, right? If you can't get through the receptionist, give a call to somebody else in the organization. You might be able to get excited to be your champion, at least to champion not maybe the project for your company, but can champion you getting that meeting with their boss, right? I tell this to my SDRs all the time, like, hey folks, we primarily sell to sales leaders, chief revenue officers, VPs of sales, so on and so forth, kind of like the other folks on the panel here. And I'll tell my reps all the time, like, hey, an AE gets really excited about Gong content, give them a call. They're probably a raving fan. They probably get the concept. They'll probably introduce you to their boss if you can really win them over.
I would also add to that any other like hyper-personalized outreach to, an assistant is equally important as hyper-personalizing outreach to an executive. And again, I've heard from people who have said, you know what, I sent a video to the, assistant, and like I got a response, they were blown away. They're like, nobody's ever sent me a video before, right? Like you're making them feel like, they're as important as everybody else in that organization, which frankly they are. And putting that level of effort into it, I think can go a long way. And so whether it's, making that call, connecting with them in a different way, personalizing the heck out of your email to them, recording and sending them a video saying, hey, want to introduce myself because, I'm hoping to make a connection here. All of those things I think are amazing tactics to get through and build a relationship with them to support being moved, to the executive.
For sure. Guys, we're after coming up on the hour, we're after going over. It's been so much fun, guys. I've really enjoyed it speaking with each of you. I hope we can do something like this again. It's been starting from the top with the fire. It's been really great. Some really great tips. Christina, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great having you. Tyler, thanks again, mate. And Russell, big thank you to all three of you. It's been a really great session, and I hope everybody that's been on has gotten a lot of value out of it. I certainly have. But one thing before we go, I know that Johnny's been posting everybody's LinkedIn profiles into the chat box. So if there are any questions, please do feel free to reach out to myself, Christina, Russell, or Tyler. Connect with us on LinkedIn. We'll try our best to answer any questions that haven't been answered. Guys, we'll be back on in the next couple of weeks. We have another big guest coming up as well. So watch this space. We'll let you know via email over the next couple of days. Guys, thanks again. It's been really great with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.